That's not me. That's not me. Is this me? Hello, everyone. I got a weird echo. You guys can hear me though. Still learning a new system here, and I may end up abandoning it. Um, yeah, that's gonna be too much delay. Okay, that'll work. Yeah, you guys should be able to hear me, but if you don't mind, let me know. Happy Wednesday. Good morning, all. Good morning. It's the first time I've said good morning, and it's the afternoon in Katua. I'm okay with it. Now I know how some of you feel. This is what that feels like. And you've been hearing me tell you, no, man, it's good morning. See? And so now you get to sort of think about that. Yeah, I'm just now having this experience for the very first time. This is not an experience that I'm used to. Does that thing? Yeah, there he is. Oh, I gotta clean the window. Prometheus says hi. The raccoons, they breathe on the window at night. They hang out on the balcony deck thing, and they just go inside the window at me. And it's weird because it's like when we started talking about the raccoon as like a psychology, they showed up, and there's three. So there's like Larry, Moe, and Curly, and at night they're like, sometimes I'm like, it feels like something's looking at me, and I look up and there's three raccoons just like, you have apples, you have apples. So anyway, let's see, make sure that we can hear. Good. Thank you. Thanks for confirming that for me. I appreciate it. Okay, I've been wanting to get into this topic for a while. It doesn't seem like it because I've been so distracted by other things. I've been distracted by other things that just keep like coming up, and I haven't been able to really adequately stay on the Aztec topic. Ooh, but hey, Rose Triple Seven just told me she read this, and she said she's really pumped about. We're going to talk about it tomorrow on Crow Triple Seven, but you won't hear that because this is like a time warp thing where we're like putting it in a time capsule and we're burying it for a couple moons and stuff like that. So there you go. But I do want to get back in this subject because I really want you guys to think about the psychology of. Really, I want you to think about the psychology of everything. But I think we seem to forget a lot of times that that man himself is not static, that his psychology hasn't actually been in any kind of static nature where he's like hanging out one day and then all of a sudden he's like psychologically mature. And I've said this before, that I think that the concept of slavery is very much misconstrued. We have this shame quotient around slavery. It's weird. We pretend that we have this shame quotient around slavery, and when actually we know how important it's been. And I think that talks like today, that not just today, but getting into the psychology, the mind of the sacrifice, the culture and the person that gets sacrificed too, both of them, you really start to look at what the mind of man. And I think it's a little embarrassing. And I don't think it's embarrassing because you should be embarrassed. I think it's embarrassing because we just don't like to look at the pimples on our ass. It's like there are divots there, and we'd rather just not really go into them, and that's a cultural thing. And because of that insistence that we do not look at things like that, I think we're missing just so much about culture. Hey, my book's out. You can. I wonder if there's a link. I don't know if there's actually a link in the description. I've been too busy working on the this new setup for today. But anyway, I say that because so much of the psychology really is tied into that book too. And let's really think about what Amuraka is. The America, when I say America, I'm talking about Amuraka. I'm talking about America, like North America, Central America, all of those things, right? Even South America. Um, but that America's first serial killer, I want you to imagine, was a religious zealot. That hermit priests would dress, they wouldn't just dress like jaguar, they would become jaguar, right? And they would dress as jaguar, caught and slew unsuspecting travelers. And after they killed it, they would leave jaguar prints where they just were, right? So where the kill was a psychological operation, definitely a psyop, but you might think of psyop as I'm going to psyop them, meaning that they are going to experience a psychological operation. When what I'm actually talking about is that the jaguar priests themselves are the psyop. That they're the ones that enter into this state of, and I know. Okay, look, I know they're serial killers. Okay, when we're talking about this, if you want to put it in the comments, that's fine. But I get that serial killer is not that great. Okay, I get that out of all things you could be in life, serial killer maybe is not the top one. But I need to dismiss that, because if you let go of the judgments, you can really just look at what the psychology is here. Just at the psychology, okay? We can have all our fantasies about justice and everyone receiving a fair trial. It's kind of like the Nuremberg thing right now. People are like, we need another Nuremberg trial. And I'm like, why? Did the first one work out really well? Did that like end all problems when it came to like mass eugenics? Is that what happened in the first one? So now we want to have a second one? Is that kind of the thinking? And this is that psychology I'm talking about. This is a psychology. This is probably better, right? Look at me all up in your ears right now. But the psychology is better because you're dismissing the things that don't feel really comfortable. And you're developing the psychology becomes a fashion where you're shaping it purely for only one reason, which is how is this going to look? Not just how is it going to look to everyone else, but how is it going to look to me? You and I think that the entire purpose of a psyop is to fool other people. And I just want you to come back to the me of Raccoon and realize that actually the psyop is a self-fulfilling prophecy. And that you are a serial killer of yourself. You are. You have these same kinds of machinations. And if you could embrace the ones that you'd have, I think you'd realize that you can actually change them. The very same person that decides to be a barrister, is that what it's called? The person that makes coffee at Starbucks is entering into the same kind of psychology. It's just more socially not so freak outish. But we still enter into these kinds of states, basically. And that they become necessary for us to even survive. What is happening right now is that we are pretending that we are in control of our own psychology. I'm talking mass collectively. I'm not talking about you as a person. I'm talking about mass collection. The collective psyche is under the impression that we are in charge of what we're thinking. And I want you to see that actually we're not. That there is a principle that is in the soil of Amuraka, which breeds a certain flavor, a seasoning, if you will, that seasons the humans that sprout in that land. And that seasonal sprout has this two-tiered function that's built into the nutrients, what we call water, right? Has this information, and we adopt it simply by drinking it. And at Templo Mayor, you could choose to sacrifice between one of two things. And I want you to see that they're not just similar, they're beyond exactly the same. If anything, they're more deeply closer to what they are than they've ever been before, because when you vote Republican, you are voting to sacrifice something to war. And if you were a Democrat, you were voting to sacrifice something for rain. Which means that you think that your people need rain if you're a Democrat, and therefore, because you need rain so much, you should kill someone. We should kill someone so we can have rain. That's the Democrat. It's based on the future, right? Think about it. It's based on the future, what will come. So when you're voting for Democrat, it's not that you're not voting for war. Just as if you're a Republican, it's actually not that you're voting for war. What you're voting for is that I want to sacrifice someone in the name of war. And when you're voting as a Democrat, what you're saying is I want to sacrifice someone in the name of rain. It doesn't actually matter if we need rain or if we need war. Do you understand? Because that is not actually what's on the ballot. The ballot is not, should we have rain or should we have war? No. What's on the ballot is we should sacrifice someone. Who should we sacrifice someone to? Should we sacrifice to rain or should we sacrifice to war? And it looks like a choice. 250 million people, maybe, think that this is a choice. And 56 million of them, maybe, have chosen one of those colors. One of those, this is who I want to sacrifice to, right? So you were seeing a living ritual pretending, masquerading itself. You're seeing a living human sacrifice ritual masquerading itself as a politic. That the sophistication that we plant around it, because of how important it is, that we find just the right person to A, kill, and B, in the name of something else. But James, how does the rain god kill? You just saw how the rain god kills. When we go overseas, it looks like that we are doing that because we have decided that we want to go overseas and kill someone else for us. But you're misunderstanding how this works. This is not about we want it to rain. This is not about we want to be safe. This is about we want to kill someone. And we want to choose which reason feels better to us. And if we could have an argument over which reason is better, none of us will ever have to listen to fucking James go on and on about, well, what if we just don't kill anybody? Right? And you know this too. That's why you're here. If you're new to the show, welcome to the show. But that's why all of the things that you see in America, there's a prana economy in the soil. It's running underneath. And it enriches the humans through their feet. It pulls up, it saturates into the thinking, and it becomes policy. But it's actually not policy. It's just how the land physically just runs things. What kind of plant is going to grow there, right? This really wasn't about scapegoat, which is very important because there's certainly a scapegoat element to that. But before, during the killing, priests and audience gathered in the plaza below, stabbed, pierced, and bled themselves as auto-sacrifice. It was an opportunity for them to hurt themselves. The what do I have this? Folio 70. Heart extraction was viewed as a means of liberating the istli and reuniting it with the sun. The victim's transformed heart flies sunward on a trail of blood. And if you really want to look at what this actually means, please consider this. That man, the consciousness, right? From raccoon, the me to I is like raccoon to man. And you're watching the psychology say, check this out, you're watching the psychology say, the sun's witness is more important than my own. And you only see this when you start to understand that people have a desire to want to kill, to sacrifice, because it's not actually because everyone's like, hey, no one wants to be killed. Excuse me. Excuse me. Sorry. It's not because the reason why you have sacrifice rampant is because there's an appetite from people to be sacrificed. Same thing for slavery. Do you know why slavery worked? It's because deep down there were people that thought the notion of slavery might be appealing. Not just might be. Every single relationship that got you here, if you're living in America right now, and you, unless you're like indigenous, even then though, you're looking at a certain psychology that's required for you to even arrive. And that if you look backwards far enough, you would find that slavery was a necessary tool. A tool that your ancestor used to pass a certain chasm. And we are actually, it's funny, but we are actually destroying upward mobility by putting this fake ass tinge on slavery like we are. Having all of these politics about how wrong slavery is never allows us to actually say, well, maybe slavery's right. And I don't really care if that seems like a fucked up thing to say, because it's just, psychology is just telling you that that's just the truth. And when you're looking at sacrifice, you also need to look at the willingness of everyone to even cope and live in that kind of world. And if you want to say, well, they didn't have a choice, I think you're going to have a hard time arguing that when there's such a large majority of people participating in it. That if your spirit disagreed that much with you wanting to be sacrificed, that I don't think that most men, and I would think a lot of women too actually, would not make it all the way to the altar, to the sacrificial altar, if that makes sense. And the same thing is true for slavery. The same thing is true for people who fought in the war that said they were drafted. It's the same kind of psychology. I hope you can see that. That the person that's like loading his gun in the trench is like, they freaking made me come here. They had no choice, but bam, caught that fucker. Oh, they fucking made me. It's the psychological excuse that we use. We call that being tempted by the devil, but really what the devil is doing is showing you what's actually already there. What the devil's really saying is, hey, you want to go dress up like a jaguar and hunt down another human being and pretend it's like for like religious reasons and then like leave like jaguar paws so you don't feel responsible? Well, I can do that? Sure, man. Well, fuck yeah, I'll do that. If you then go do that, you don't get to blame that on the devil. I know that we have this really lovely relationship with the devil where we get to have conversations like that and we get to say, well, the devil said some words to me and, well, what are you going to do? Devil says words to you. What are you going to do? And that is the quest for this kind of slavery. Do you understand? That's proof that that there's a large chunk of us, even internally inside of you, that finds the economy of creating a situation like that, right? Of creating a situation of perpetual torture as long as there's no resolve, because it kind of facilitates a certain kind of energy transfer that we have, right? And that's what you've got going on here. I can prove it. I want you to imagine that you're just out. Your village is pretty intense. You're camping with some people. You've been camping with them now for generations. You're in Guatemala. And you notice when you come back to camp, sometimes everyone around you grabs someone out of the woods and pulls them back and just murders them. And then everyone just feels better. And you've been raised on that. It's not like you were like hanging around and all of a sudden that just happened one day. From the time you were a baby, from the time you were really young, this is what you saw. And it's really no different than, sadly, it's really no different than watching a dog torture a rabbit in the yard. Sorry to say that, but it's like, it's the same sort of, when the nurturing, when the soil percolates inside, this is what I mean by even having a prana economy. There are things that we are that we just don't really like to admit. And I'm not saying that all of you are psychopaths, not at all. I'm saying that all of us have the exact same relationship to our honesty of what we are, who we're capable of, all that stuff, right? I think you get what I'm saying. You're wandering around and all your neighbors are pretty intense. You're in Mesoamerican culture and you see this plant, this yucca. It's probably not called a yucca. Sorry. I'm just going to call it a yucca though. You see this really long ass yucca and you're like, holy shit, I got an idea. And you take a flint knife and you slit open your tongue and you slit your genitals and you slit your ears and you bleed all over this thing. And you walk into the village, you're high as a fucking kite. The loss of blood is causing you're feeling dizzy. But more importantly, the way people are looking at you, they're like, oh my God, he's in ecstasy. You are speaking in tongues, except for you are speaking in blood. And this is the exact same kinds of things that happens with snake charming, right? With speaking in tongues, with all of these things. It's no different than a mosh pit. It's the exact same energy as a mosh pit. And I'm not trying to say it's wrong. I think this is kind of beautiful that we have this piece of us still there. And I think that the more we insist that it's gone, the more it keeps showing up in other rituals that are so obviously not about voting. It's more about who are we going to sacrifice next. There are more people are living in tents, probably, in Seattle right now than in houses. That's not about rain, is it? It's not about, we need more rain, right? It's, we need to sacrifice in the name of rain. And so the needles come down. It's, everyone is doing what's natural for them to do by being a part of this soil. It takes a sovereign person to grab the wheel of the soil, right? And say, this piece of land that I live on is now conscious. And if you do not do that, then that land still will exercise its right to speech. It will still speak, but it will speak through someone else's consciousness, not yours. And if there's never a conscious person in line, it will simply speak this deeper notion in the soil. And this is where it gets tricky, because you might think that I'm trying to imply that the soil is psychopathic. But no, the soil is a farmer. The soil is raising a crop of consciousness. And that consciousness in order for it to raise to its appropriate level where it will flower, is going to need a lot of attention and a lot of nutrients that cause it to bloom, right? That consciousness itself has to form inside that flower and to even have the stamina to form the stamina to actually open and bloom. And that requires what looks like a lot of human sacrifice, because that is exactly how you breed consciousness. The more you elicit human sacrifice in your village, the more you are teaching people that, hey, maybe life is worth something. That even knowing that your heart could power the entire village is exactly what a psychology needs that hasn't even gotten to the point of slavery yet. That below slavery is a different kind of consciousness. So you've got sovereign, right? Promethean, right? Ubermensch, right? Ubermensch, Promethean, dude, right? And then you've got sort of like, I'm trying to wake up, but I'm really having a hard time. You've got people with social security numbers, right? Birth certificates. All of us are in there. We're doing our best. We're doing great, by the way. You're looking good, And then below that, you've got this indentured servant level, right? And there's a lot of that. And then below that, you have white collar, blue collar, same thing. You're indentured to a program, a animated dead thing, right? That's a corporation, is an animated dead thing, is dictating what it is you do and how you do it, right? That's part of the psychology of coming into sovereignty. So let's keep going down. Below that, below indentured servitude, you have slavery, right? I am a slave. I am a property of someone. You might think, oh, that's awful. You're a property of something. No. That's actually great. It's actually fantastic, because you don't know, you forgot what it felt like to feel completely worthless, to be wandering through the forest, shaking your genitals at whoever was there. Some of you maybe shake whatever, but just in this raccoon state of mind where even the concept of worth is developing in you. That it needs a way of emerging itself into something higher. And the human sacrifice is that on-ramp. It's a ramping up into slavery, which gets you into indentured servitude, which gets you into working for someone else, which gets you maybe into self-employment. I'm not saying it has to be that way, but into some kind of freelance contractor that then gets you into some kind of autonomous living off the land is definitely part of all this. That's why I said maybe you're self-employed, but it's like you become self-sufficient. And finally, you start to realize that you are so fucking conscious that you don't even need land anymore. That you actually somehow, through an airship, through some sort of underwater thing, through your own ice cutter, because of how clearly sovereign you fucking are, you develop the ability to leave the womb of land. That even land has this same Jacob's ladder built into it. But we will not progress if we are insisting that the rungs we were just on were wrong. In fact, if we doubt our ladder while we're on it, we will sit and stagnate where we are. And that will make us feel good. It will make us feel that everything will be okay because we can find distractions. What if one of us was to push another one of us off this ladder? Then that would appease someone, and then all of us would then be able to go higher, and you end up with these kinds of thoughts, and sometimes they get out of hand. If you watch an AI learning how to walk, right, you'll see that as it's training, it'll start throwing its arm up, or it'll start like ticking, it'll twitch. It never actually learns that, hey, you can just put your arm down, dude. It takes forever for it to even learn that, because it's built so much time knowing that, well, I really want to walk, and I know if I do this with my arm, I can walk, so I'm going to do that. And that's what they do. We are the same. our learning is done the exact same way. Do you realize why AI is so successful? It's because it just mimicked the way you learn. That there are neurological agencies inside the AI that are competing for the best resolution, and the one that wins is the exact same thing that happens inside your neural net when you decide who's going to be your ego today. That when you wake up, there are several different factions that are competing for that authority. It's the exact same kind of thing. This is how we raise up. And so you try things like bleeding all over a yucca tree and walking into a village and having people give you praise. And now you realize, well, I raise my status if I do this, if I bleed. I raise my status if I bleed, says you. I will raise my status if I bleed. And next thing you know, you're under the impression that in order for us to preserve America, we have to go to one of the tiniest islands in the Pacific and stick a metal rod in the ground. Because if we are going to raise up, we need someone else to bleed. We're done bleeding. And what does that mean, done bleeding mean? Think about it. Think about it. You are getting tired of this solution. You're finally to the point where you're like, man, I am fucking sick of having to move my arm just to breathe my, if I want to digest, I have to do this with my arm because that's what my ancestors taught me because that's what we would figure out. That's where we are. And when we look back at slavery and we have this shitty ass attitude about it, it's because we're embarrassed. And the fact that we're embarrassed by the slavery actually means that we have stepped above it. That's actually kind of beautiful. It's a compliment to how far we've come. When you're looking at your old techniques that got you here and you feel embarrassed by them, that's actually a form of propelling yourself even higher up this ladder, right? It's taking you even higher up that state. But to get there, you're going to be surrounded by people that are like, well, someone needs to bleed. And what is indebtedness? Well, guys, think about it. What is indebtedness really? When I am indebted to my nation, that is the psychology of saying, I want to be the nation's slave. Can you see it? Can you see that? I am indebted really means, hey, I'm not out here on my own. It's fucking wintertime. No. I'm indebted to this guy. And this guy happens to be the dude that's feeding you soup every night and letting you stay in his barn. Treats you like shit. Treats you like property, right? But you were indebted to him, right? You say, I'm indebted to him. Same thing you do when you're 13. You talk about your parents. You talk shit about your parents the same way, right?